Hello, my dear subscribers. I have some important news to share with you today. If you haven't seen my last video, I want to let you know that my old channel, Strange Stories, has been discontinued. This has happened because Google has disabled my AdSense account without any reason or warning. I was devastated to lose the channel that I've been working on for so long, but I didn't let it stop me. Instead, I created a new channel called Fascinating Stories. Fascinating Stories is all about the same topic as Strange Stories, near-death experiences. It features the same amazing testimonies sent from viewers like you, and I'm really excited about the new content that I'm creating. So if you love hearing about these incredible stories and want to keep following me on this journey, please subscribe to Fascinating Stories and hit the notification bell so you won't miss a thing. It would mean the world to me to have your support on this new channel. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you on my new channel soon.
I grew up in a small rural village where everyone knows everyone else. I was 15 years old in the summer of 1978. There had been rain in the neighborhood a few days before. I had decided that day, for some odd reason, that I was going to hit these leaps faster than I have ever done before. I wanted to jump from the first jump to the second jump. I accelerated to about 70 miles per hour as I approached the jumps. I was urged to slow down by a voice. I ignored the voice and accelerated even further. It was not the first time I had heard the voice. The voice is precious to me and I still hear it. I grew up in a violent and brutal household. Whenever I was beaten, lashed, or locked up, there was always a voice there to console and speak to me. This voice speaks to me when I'm disturbed, in need, or when an important event is about to occur. Do not get me wrong, I'm not searching for pity. I assumed that every youngster had the same upbringing as mine. Thus, I regarded myself to be normal. This voice or presence not only reassured me, but also forewarned me of impending events or threats. I never gave it much thought until I was older, since I assumed that everyone had that voice or presence around them. Back to the accident. As I already stated, I ignored the voice. Instead of slowing down, I sped up as I approached the leap. I was resolved to jump higher than I'd ever done before. I noticed a rut at the top of the jump an instant before I struck it. I lost control as a result of the rut. In mid-air, the front of the motorcycle nosed down and the back sideways. I failed to clear the second jump. I could not regain control of the bike before landing. When I was unconscious, I landed headfirst on the side of the second jump. The accident was witnessed by two men. They were following me at a much slower pace. They both saw me land the jump, which created a large cloud of dust when I touched the ground. They noticed me approximately 5 feet above the dust, upside down and flying through the air. Then I vanished as I sank back into the dust cloud. They indicated they were terrified to approach me, so they came to a halt around 50 yards away. They watched me for a few minutes and observed no movement from me. They discussed it amongst themselves and agreed to get closer. They came to a stop about 15 feet away, got off their motorcycle, and stood there, staring at me, frightened to get any closer. Because they could not see any movement or breathing from me, they assumed I was dead. After a few sentences, one of them moved in closer, but still noticed no movement or signs of life from me. He noticed me taking a deep breath and slowly opening my eyes all of a sudden. They later told me that it took roughly 5 minutes from the time I wrecked to the time they observed me take a breath. I was not wearing a helmet that day because I was just riding around on the motorcycle. It was not like a race or anything. Everything went black for a split second when I saw the ground come up at me and slam me head first. For a little while, I could hear and feel my heartbeat before opening my eyes and standing up. To my surprise, I was standing there staring at myself, all twisted up on the ground. Then I heard that familiar voice, the one I would always hear behind me, say, "Hurry, we have to go." I turned around right away. For the first time, I beheld the person from whom the voice had always come. This person can only be described as what appears to be an angel. This angel was roughly the size of a 5 or 6-year-old girl, yet she was very strong, forceful and authoritative. "What do you mean we have to go?" I asked, surprised. "Where are you going?" "Hurry, we have to go," she said, her voice tense. "The Dark Ones are on their way." She then pointed west from where we were. 3 clearly evil, tormented, black spirits were approaching me from about 50 feet away, and they wanted to take me with them. They seemed to have been sent by Satan or another demonic entity to capture my spirit and seize it for him. They appeared to be tangled together and twirling around each other, with a dark mist enveloping them and floating just above the earth. They wore black robes and had pale, empty faces with only eye sockets for eyes. I also had the impression that one of them symbolized agony and suffering. Another was lost and locked in despair, and the third was simply evil and intent on guiding the others to capture me. He was plainly in charge of the other 2, and he was taller. I looked up at the angel who was hovering just above my head and extended her arm for me to grab onto. She was wrapped in a robe and had what appeared to be a golden crown on her head. She began flying higher as we clutched each other's wrists. When I looked down, I noticed the 2 people who had watched my accident. I also saw the Dark Ones gathered around my body, furious and upset because they had failed to capture me. As the angel and I ascended, I noticed the ground shrinking and shrinking. We then flew into space, accelerating faster and faster until the Earth vanished. We flew by so many stars and planets in such a short period of time that they became a blur. I started looking up at the direction we were going. Because of the speed at which we were traveling, it took all of the strength I had in my neck to raise my head upwards. The stars and planets were moving so quickly that the light reflected off of them made it appear as if we were passing through a light tunnel. Finally, we arrived at a point where it appeared as if we had passed through a threshold or barrier to get there. It appeared to be a light golden, cloudy region hanging in space and illuminated with a pleasant, soothing light. I had such a fantastic vibe there. There was no hot or cold, pain or discomfort, hunger or thirst, or want or need for anything. I got an overpowering sense of love that seemed to start, radiate out, and saturate the entire space. This location was as amazing as you could possibly imagine. This sight was, in my opinion, heaven. The angel took me to the edge, where I had to hold on to anything and pull myself up. "I have to depart," said the angel. "There are several others." This worried me since I felt completely alone in this unfamiliar area. When I looked to my right, I saw 2 people standing at a pedestal with a book on it. The book would be roughly 2 feet tall, 18 inches broad, and 2 inches thick when closed. The 2 on the podium seemed to recognize me, and I recognized them at the time. Later in this event, I was advised that I could not go back knowing what I know today. So, before I was sent back, I had a lot of details of my experience erased from my memory. One of the men stood behind the one in front of him, peering over his shoulder. He appeared to be overseeing or instructing the person in front of him. "Why are you here?" asked the man in front of me. I gazed up at him, terrified and sad. "What do you mean, why am I here?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Do you mean I'm supposed to go down there?" I asked, as I looked down and suggested the place the Dark Ones wanted to take me, or hell was where they wanted me to be. I must tell you that we did not converse in words throughout the entire event, but rather in a subliminal language that I understood and spoke. For example, I once heard one word and an image projected into my head and had an instant knowledge of a subject. It could have taken hundreds of words for me to comprehend what was being conveyed. I used the term them or they, since everyone seemed to have the same perspective and reached the same conclusion on everything. There was no disagreement at that point. They both chuckled and assured me, No, it's not your time yet. What do you mean it's not my time? I asked. They opened the book and turned it so I could see it. On each page of the book, from top to bottom, there were 3 columns of names. The man in front of them pointed and scanned the page of the book to which they were referring. It's not yet your time, they said again. This is the current time, and you're not listed here. Then, as they pointed to my name in the book, he flipped back farther in the book until there was only about 1/8 of an inch of pages remaining and stated, "This is your moment." I had numerous thoughts at that moment, including the fact that I was intended to be in paradise near the conclusion of the time when names were due to be recorded in the book. Perhaps it's not the end of time, but rather the end of the names in the book. I realized I was loved and that I would return. But I'm here now, I said, and I wanted to stay. You must return, they said. You are a part of God's plan, and if you stay here now, this is all there is for you, they said, as they gestured deeper into the area where I was. What do you mean this is all there will be? I asked. Do you mean there is a better place than this one? It depends on your work on Earth, but we cannot send you back, they said. What do you mean I'm a part of God's plan, and I have to go back, but you cannot send me back? We will take you to God, they said. He will figure it out. The 2 led me to a location where God was present. He was at a higher position in heaven. As they drew me closer to him, I noticed he was seated Indian style, with his knees crossed. He was clad in robes that were off-white in tone. God reached over and put his hands down towards me, as if he were ready to pick up a young child. Come, he said. I extended my hands to him. He took my hands in his, lifted me and placed me in front of him. His hands were the biggest, strongest, and roughest, but also the softest, warmest, and gentlest. I could not bear looking at him. You humans all have the same belief that you cannot look upon me, he laughed. Your beliefs in the Bible are not perfect, but they are the best you have, and you must do the best you can with them. He appeared to be happy with us. I raised my head slowly to meet his gaze. He was enormous. I would say he was around 10 feet tall, with a whitish gray beard and hair and a lovely face. I was almost out of breath. God placed his hand on my brow. He was able to see and feel everything I'd ever done in my life. He looked to see if I was sorry for the wrongs I would done, how I felt in my heart at the time, how I felt afterwards, or whether or not I apologized or set things right. He also saw all of the good I had done in my life, whether I was actually good or whether I was doing good to obtain something, and how truly I felt at the moment. He assessed the positives and negatives in my life and concluded, yes, you are good. You are a part of my strategy, he continued. He gave me a photo of myself as an elderly man with a child. I realized the youngster pulling the wheelchair I was sitting in was my son, who had broken my neck in the motorcycle accident I had just experienced. I took this to indicate that I was paralyzed and that my son would have to care for me. Where is the boy's mother? I inquired. Has she died? She's gone to the west, he said. Since I was just 15 years old at the time, this was the future. Later, when I was 23, I married and had a son with my first wife. When my son was 1.5 years old, his mother divorced me and moved to California, never to return. You can stay, but I want you to go back because you are a part of my plan, God said. What do you mean I'm a part of your plan? I inquired. It was then demonstrated what my role in God's plan was and how every one of us affects everyone around us. I was shown that all of our encounters have a consequence, like a domino effect of good or negative. I was taught that if I stayed, God would have to change millions of events in order for his plans to work, since I would not be present to see it through. I will go back for you if it is a part of your plan, which I completely understood at the time. But if I go back, can you fix my neck? Not for me, but for my son, so he doesn't have to look after me. It is awful enough that his mother is no longer alive. You will not be allowed to recall and maintain all of the knowledge you have received here, since humans will not understand, nor will they realize what my purpose is for now. God agreed. With that spoken and understood, God returned me to my physical body. In comparison to the angel's trek to heaven, it happened practically immediately. He put me back in my body, and I was about to leave when I discovered he had not mended my neck. "Wait!" I exclaimed. "What about my neck?" I wonder. God then returned and reset his palm on the back of my neck. As things began to settle back into place, my neck began to crackle, snap, and make noises. His touch on my neck felt warm, but it was a healing kind of warmth. God started to go, and I discovered that my neck was still not right. "Wait, there's one more thing out of place," I remarked. "That is to act as a reminder so that you'll never forget what has transpired," God said. God then returned to heaven. I began to awaken. Everything went back to black as it had before. I suddenly began to see sunlight and took the deepest breath I'd ever taken before or since. Then my life returned to my body. When I opened my eyes, the two guys who had witnessed my wreck jumped back. "Are you all right?" one of them inquired. "We assumed you were no longer alive." Of course, I was taken aback. I was in a lot of discomfort due to muscle and tendon bruising and ripping in my arm, shoulder, back, legs, and more importantly, my neck. I requested them to assist me in getting up, and they did. I could not keep my head upright, so it lay on my right shoulder. They supported my mangled and bent-up motorcycle. They assisted me in getting back on track. Because I couldn't lift my right arm, I had to maintain the right grip and operate the throttle with my left hand. The handlebars were so twisted that the right grip was immediately in front of me. Because I could not kickstart the motorcycle, this allowed me to hang on as the two guys started it with me on it. I was able to travel at a very sluggish pace and was unsure whether I would make it home or to the hospital. It just so happened that a friend of mine, who lived about a quarter-mile away from the track, was working on his car in front of his house. I was able to idle up to him and simply let my motorcycle fall over next to his automobile. He inquired as to my well-being. "No," I said. "I simply died and then reappeared. I have to go to the hospital." He laughed. "What?" I informed him once more that I had died, gone to heaven, and returned. We discussed it in depth later. He picked me up and drove me to his house. He drove me to the hospital and carried me into the emergency room. People at the hospital began asking me questions, some of which I answered and some of which I could not because I was still processing what had just happened. They summoned my parents, who arrived at the hospital and signed paperwork authorizing a doctor to care for me. They attempted an x-ray of my neck because it appeared to be the most serious damage I had. When the x-ray film was developed, it was displayed on the screen for the doctor to examine. My neck was whited out on the x-ray, much to their amazement. In other words, you could see my eye sockets and skull above my neck, as well as a few vertebrae below it. However, the area around my neck appeared white and devoid of definition. They decided there was a problem with the film and x-rayed me twice more. They inspected their footage under the x-ray table, trying to find out why my neck was whited out. I believe it's because God touched me there and his healing power emanated energy that washed away the x-ray film. The x-ray technicians eventually gave up and stated that they did not believe my neck was broken. My arm was ripped open and they successfully x-rayed it, but it was not broken. Because there was no sling available, the doctor strapped my right arm to my left shoulder and sent me home. He refused to offer me a neck brace because he believed it would take longer to recover. This is an experience that I've only shared with a few people in my life. Those that know me trust me. Some of those who do not try to explain what they think I imagined, while others believe. This is the truth, and this is what happened. I promise to you, this was true. I did not become a preacher or do anything special in my life, but I was able to assist a few people who were having troubles or were at a low moment in their lives. When people require my assistance, I always seem to have the appropriate words to say. Aside from that, I'm not much of a talker or a motivator. I am simply myself.